adapt operations for changing local conditions and guidance from public health officials. The roadmap to fall 2020 focuses on three key areas of effort. The first, it creates a flexible, COVID-ready campus experience, which minimizes health and safety risks to faculty, staff, and students, and also community members. Secondly, it allows faculty to develop academic instruction that enables our mission and ensures student success. And third, it aligns resources in support of those first two areas. Among the dozen of health and safety measures included in this plan, we expect that we can reduce each person's potential for infectious contacts by at least 55% by first requiring masks for all students and employees, reducing density of people from normal operations, providing opportunities for students to form cohorts to minimize person-to-person interactions in classroom and in residence halls, implementing building control measures such as physical distancing in all campus classrooms and learning spaces, greater sanitation measures, including ensuring surface hygiene, and finally, residence hall space for quarantining and isolation. I want to acknowledge the innovative work of the numerous campus experts who served on the academic year 2020 to 21 planning team. The team took into account more than 1,500 points of input from students, faculty, staff, deans, and executive leadership, as well as parents, alumni, and community members. Faculty, staff, and administration will work over the next several weeks to build the infrastructure necessary to meet the goals of this roadmap. With it, we will develop high-quality academic instruction and continue our research and scholarship while minimizing the spread of virus. I'll now turn it over to Provost Russell Moore, who will give us more details about the academic side of our operations.
Thank you, Chancellor Stefano. As we approach our academic mission during this time, students and faculty will see a number of changes this coming fall. These science-based modifications are aimed at keeping the highest bar of instruction and learning for our students, while keeping all of our community members as safe as possible. Here are some of the key academic elements of the roadmap to fall 2020. We will be conducting a regular 16-week semester term that will begin on August 21st, and in-person classes will run through November 25th, which will mark the beginning of the Thanksgiving break. Classes will resume after Thanksgiving break remotely. This will allow students to travel home and remain there until the spring semester begins. We're implementing a first-of-its-kind first-year academic experience for all first-year students. Those students will be housed and enrolled in classes in small cohort groups. Courses will be offered in a variety of in-person, distance, and hybrid formats. We will reduce the density of students in classrooms through a suite of methods. This includes splitting single classes into multiple sessions and utilizing larger spaces to de-densify the campus. CU Boulder will extend class scheduling to use the entire day from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m., Monday through Friday. This is meant to decrease student density on campus and enable in-person instruction. As we approach the start of the semester, we'll also look to support returning students, graduate students, and our instructors in new ways. I'll now turn it over to Chief Operating Officer Patrick O'Rourke to discuss campus operations.
Thanks, Russ. Our operational plans for this fall are all aimed at mitigating COVID-19 while realigning resources to provide the best academic experience possible. Based on scientific input from on-campus experts and public health officials in the community, here are some of the measures we're going to implement to achieve our mission. We're working on increasing on-campus capability for COVID-19 testing of students, faculty, and staff. This will help us continuously monitor for potential spread and test individuals with symptoms. We're instituting rapid response teams for tracking, notification, and isolation of affected individuals. On-campus faculty, staff, and students will undergo mandatory safety training. That includes instruction on physical distancing, wearing of face coverings, hand hygiene, sanitation, and following public health orders on events and public gatherings. We will initiate a public awareness campaign and outreach program in collaboration with the Boulder Police Department, the Boulder County Public Health, and student leadership. The campus is updating the code of conduct and related policies to include observance of COVID-19 public health requirements both on and off campus. Everyone on campus will be required to wear a mask, and the campus will provide cloth masks for all students and employees for their use in the fall. Many of our staff members will continue to work remotely in order to decrease campus density, and each unit seeking approval to return to campus will be required to develop risk mitigation plans and to follow campus return to work protocols. We also plan to use residence hall spaces for quarantining and isolation if and when that's needed. And finally, all campus classrooms and learning spaces will have physical distancing diagrams to make it clear how to use that space in a safe and learning effective way.
Thank you. We want to reiterate that the whole plan is available via colorado.edu/roadmap. Now we're going to open it up for questions. Again, if you're on video, please raise your hand and we'll call on you. We will periodically open up the floor for questions over the phone. So Grace, I see you literally raising your hand. Why don't you?
I was wondering if you could please describe a little bit more on the contact tracing and what the testing regime will look like. And will COVID testing be mandatory for students? For example, what happens if a student declines to be tested?
I can go ahead and take that question. So we're looking at multiple options in terms of testing, including being able to test for those who have symptoms, as well as implementing a variety of different techniques in terms of to be able to test for, to provide monitoring so that we're able to validate how effective our social distancing controls are. We haven't gotten to the point where we would be making decisions in terms of mandatory testing.
And it sounds like there's going to be maybe a team put in place for contact tracing. Anything more you can give me there?
Sorry about that. Yes. So we're working with campus teams to develop, to train individuals to provide contact tracing. That is the type of, that activity will happen in partnership and at the direction of Boulder County Public Health.
Great, thank you. Elizabeth, you look like you had a question.
Yeah, I know I was told this morning that some students will have roommates. Can you talk about a little bit more about that situation? How decides who gets a roommate? Anything more on housing?
Sure.
Just on the roommate situation.
I think I can take that one, which is we are planning in the residence halls for those rooms that are double occupancy to have people having roommates. Professor McQueen would probably be able to provide a more scientific answer, but the goal is to reduce the number of times that large groups of students are interacting with each other, and that the risk of having a roommate doesn't really raise the risk of infectivity very much in terms of the overall profile. So we believe it's safe to have 2 people in room for normal occupancy. Matt, anything to add there?
No, you covered that. It really, it would be similar to students housing, for example, if they have a roommate, all of us housing, collectively with our families. And then the goal from there would be to minimize, as Patrick just mentioned, minimize the social networking across campus from that point forward.
Great. So if students have more than a single roommate, if there's a triple or a quadruple or something, is that the same as well?
Scientifically, yes, that'd be the same. As long, so the main idea is that we would not want to shuffle who their roommates are. Once you have a roommate, that is your roommate for the semester. Whether it's 2, 3, or 4 would be the same as whether we've got, you know, a household family members of 2, 3, and 4. It's just keeping that group together.
Okay. Thanks, Elizabeth. Katie Langford and then Serena.
Yes, so I understand from the news release that it sounds like there will be possibly more class sections to of in-person classes to have smaller class sizes. Do you anticipate this will have an impact on the faculty as far as teaching more classes throughout the day?
Yes, it will have an impact on the faculty. I think what's important here is allowing them the creativity and innovation to go ahead and figure out how best to use hybrid modalities where appropriate to provide the most robust academic experience while maintaining a decreased social and physical density and physical distancing on campus. We don't believe it'll be an inordinate increase in the workload, but again, we've never done this before, so I think there will be some course preparation that will have to go into this. I've been heartened by generally the enthusiasm which faculty are taking this challenge on.
Great, thank you.
Serena Ung from Fox 31.
Actually, my question was asked and answered, so I'm good.
Question from Ivan Rodriguez. Go ahead, Ivan.
Hello. Just speaking with a couple students here on campus, what would you tell them when they're saying they don't feel they have to pay a full semester when they're really only going to be getting half of a semester of in-person learning?
Well, we're not intending to deliver a half a semester of learning per se. Today, learning employs technology even pre-COVID-19. This will be a little more intense utilization of technology in innovative ways. The whole perspective, and it's required by our national and regional accreditors, is that no matter what modality we use, it meets the same standard and the same high bar that we would have delivered pre-COVID-19.
Any other questions from folks? Sarah Brown, go ahead.
Hey, I'm from the Chronicle of Higher Ed. So I wanted to ask specifically about sort of meeting the needs of vulnerable populations. So, you know, you talk about we're going to be meeting the needs of students whose health or personal circumstances require them to learn remotely. Is the idea that vulnerable students, as well as faculty and staff, would be encouraged to stay away from campus this fall?
I think it's not so much encouraging them to stay away from campus as it is making sure that those students who have a particular health and safety need have options to be able to learn remotely if that's something that they need for personal safety. Similarly, we know under Colorado's governor's orders, there are certain types of vulnerable populations right now defined as people who are over age 65 or who have cardiac or respiratory predispositions that we need to make sure that they are able to work remotely rather than having them come to campus, and we're prepared to make sure that we have learning and teaching opportunities available for anybody who is in a vulnerable population.
And then to follow up on that, so obviously the list of at-risk populations is very long. So I'm thinking, for example, a student with asthma who maybe doesn't need to hunker down for the entire semester at home, but still could be at risk. I mean, how would you accommodate students like that if they did return to campus housing, dining, and classes under this plan?
Flexibly, which is that we need to be working with the faculty in order to recognize that students may have particular health situations. Obviously, if somebody came down with a COVID infection, that might mean that they're in quarantine or isolation for a period of time, and that we need to enable them to be able to continue their studies depending on what their circumstances are. So there may be people who are in the in-person community for part of the semester, and for health or safety reasons or personal reasons may not be able to attend every session in person, and we need to make sure that they're able to earn their credits.
All right, thank you. Elizabeth and then Ivan have follow-up questions.
Yeah, as far as Greek life, I know sororities are still under CU purview. Is there any indication what sorority or Greek life housing will look like?
Certainly for sororities and other groups with whom we're working, we're asking them to maintain CDC and public health department distancing guidelines and protocols. We're also modifying our student code of conduct to try to put some more discipline in the social distancing or the physical distancing protocols that we need to use on campus. This is going to be a community-involved engagement, and we're working on education protocols as well as code of conduct modifications to try to make sure that we're providing the safest environment for all involved.
And Elizabeth, the off-campus houses would fall under the Boulder County and their regulations, so that those fraternity and sorority houses that are located off the campus premises would have to comply with whatever the county restrictions are for how they house people in the fall.
Ivan, did you have a follow-up?
Yes. If you guys could explain the thought process behind the starting off with in-person, then moving to remote. Some people we've spoken with have said, they don't feel comfortable going to campus in the beginning, then going back home, pretty much spreading some sort of disease possibly back home to their family or to their communities. So what was the thought process behind sort of the order of first in person and then remote?
Dan, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, so the thought process is, going back to the idea of reducing the number of contacts when students go home for Thanksgiving, then return. That's an opportunity to increase that spread. So that seemed to be the safest approach. We also know that just like over the remainder of the spring and during presently, we have students who will need to stay on campus, and the campus will continue to support that.
If I may just ask a follow-up on that, I know that some universities are actually starting earlier in August so that they can end around that Thanksgiving mark and not have students flying home and being exposed to the virus. Did you folks ever consider that as a possible scenario to follow for the semester, maybe perhaps starting earlier in August?
We did consider that scenario, but we have fairly robust summer enrollments in summer school in our summer sessions. And we thought logistically it was too heavy of a lift to try to modify the start time of our semester. Furthermore, we think the strategy that we put in place right now is pretty amenable to the generally good weather we have here in the fall, and then allowing folks to go home. The key is not to have folks travel back, travel home and travel back. That's not the best practice.
Okay. Katie has a question, then Sarah, then Elizabeth. So Katie, go ahead.
As far as the changes to the student code of conduct, can you talk about what some of those sanctions might look like for students who don't follow public health requirements or campus policies around COVID-19 safety?
Those are still being worked out, but I think suffice it to say we have a current code of conduct that generally starts with education, but ranging in sanctions from just various disciplinary sanctions, including suspensions, but that would be in the worst case scenario.
Yeah, and let me follow on there, which is we do want to modify the student code of conduct to reflect that people engaging in practices that endanger somebody's health would be sanctionable under the student code of conduct, but much like the police who have had the ability to enforce COVID orders around the state, we want to begin first with education and by being able to work with our student population and relying upon the leadership of our student government to help demonstrate proper behaviors, and to work on being able to do that in a non-coercive manner. Obviously, if people are doing things that are contrary to our expectations, we would have the ability to approach it from a disciplinary standpoint, but we really want to approach it in partnership with student government and others first in order to try to be able to provide education and help our community stay safe.
Thank you. Sarah and then Elizabeth.
I also wanted to ask about, in terms of working on scaling up testing and just generally serving more people who will have health needs in the fall semester. I mean, logically, more people will be turning to campus health services. What kinds of investments will be necessary for that? Are you all planning on hiring lots of new staff to serve the health needs of the campus population?
So we are planning that we'll have to make some targeted hires. We already have capabilities through our Wardenburg Health Center and through our existing staff to be able to do a lot of the testing, and also to be able to do it. But like Dan Jones mentioned earlier, we are building up our capabilities to do things like contact tracing. And it's one of the things that as we've approached this plan, we've recognized that our first priority has to be health and safety. So we'll be allocating resources appropriately to make sure that we can increase our testing capability and increase our contact tracing, and doing things like taking a certain percentage of the residence halls offline so that it's available to be able to serve for isolation and quarantine if necessary, so that we have safe places within the community to be able to address any type of outbreak if it occurs.
Thank you, Sarah. Elizabeth, you had a question?
Yeah, can someone explain a little bit more about the student cohorts and maybe how many students are expected to be in those, and sort of how you decide who is grouped together and who's living together and the classes they're taking together?
I can give a quick just overview of the concept scientifically of what the goal there is. So the idea, again, from a broad perspective, is to kind of disconnect some of these social networks that higher education is really good at establishing among first-year students. A lot of these core courses or general education courses that are required of all students really have a mixing effect across, really across the entire campus, multiple colleges, and so on. So the idea is to almost recreate kind of the natural cohorts that emerge as a student progresses through their education, as they start tracking into classes that are more similar to their, within their major. And so the idea is to try to recreate that model within the first year experience as well. And so really based upon their interests, how they register for courses will largely frame or structure how they're cohorted, if you will, during the first year.
Elizabeth, as far as cohort numbers, right now we have in our residential academic programs in the residence halls, we have courses with 20 to 25 students in the residence hall. So that's one example of a cohort group, and as Matt said, that same group will be in, let's say, 3 to 4 courses together, which will significantly reduce the number of students that they would normally be with on a, quote, normal semester.
Any other questions? Grace.
More. I'm curious, it sounds like there's going to be a lot of extra things this coming semester, this fall semester. Do you have a ballpark of what this will cost? And if you don't currently know, when might you know what the cost will be?
So we've done some estimation on this. We don't have precise numbers yet because we're still planning some of it out. But what we budgeted was somewhere in the neighborhood of $10 to $15 million in COVID-related expenses, just related on fall return to campus.
All right, great. And Matt, did you want to talk a little bit about the training students for the contact tracing?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't jump in soon enough, but during an earlier question regarding kind of resources and personnel needed to meet this demand of contact tracing and so on, one of the ideas that we are putting into place is to train probably mostly junior and senior students who have an interest in health and public health on campus, and offer credit for them to be trained and assist medical services through Wardenberg, as well as a team of faculty on the contact tracing efforts on campus, which then feeds back into the county. And then that will be also part of the Metro Denver Partnership for Health, the 6-county collaboration that's going to be involved in the training and assistance with the contact tracing for the whole area.
Thank you. Any last call for questions before I turn it over to the Chancellor just for some final thoughts? So, okay, friends. All right, Chancellor DeStefano.
Great, thank you. And first of all, I want to thank you for participating in our press conference today. What I want to leave you with is, we started this exercise about talking about two major principles. One is, of course, the health and safety of our faculty and our students and our staff. And secondly, providing a quality education for our students, whether it's in an in-person classroom setting, a remote setting, or a hybrid setting. And that's what we're doing this summer. So today, we announced the plan, and then we'll start working with our implementation teams this summer to make sure that we're prepared when students come back in August to be COVID ready, to have an academic model that ensures student success. And then thirdly, to put the resources behind the first two for us to be successful. So again, I want to thank everyone for participating. And if there are follow-up questions, please direct those to Candace and her team, and we can answer any questions in the follow-up. So thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. You can reach the whole media team at cunews@colorado.edu 24/7. I hope you have a great day.